Welcome to Walking in Spirit and Truth. My name is Sandi Craig, and I'm one of your hosts for this evening. And I think I'm the only one you're going to get this evening. Yeah. John's on the road. So he said, should I try to do it on my phone? And I said, you've done it before, but you were in a different vehicle. We're still down 3 vehicles. So he's in a 1999 Cavalier. And I told him, no, you just need to focus on driving in the dark and getting home. So you got me tonight, but that's okay, right? Because what we have been doing is studying Psalm 23, and we are at the end, guys. It's been, honestly, with the things that we've done in between and the breaks and things, it's been a year. This has been a year-long study. I was looking back and I have them all uploaded from the past, and the first show on Psalm 23 was 12/14 of 21. So yeah, this has been quite a journey, but it has been one that we have discovered a lot in. Yeah, there's been a lot to discover. So we're going to jump right in. So the first thing I want you to do is get your word out and let's read Psalm 23 together. And if you have it memorized, let's do that. Either way, let's get in the word and speak that word, because that word is powerful. A psalm of David, a psalm of David. Yahweh is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff shall comfort me. Thou shalt prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup is running over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of Yah forever. Wow. What a psalm, right? We have unpacked so many meanings to this thing, so much depth in this thing, and tonight's not going to be the exception to that rule. So, where are we at? Well, last week we talked about dwell, and we're going to go to in the household of Yah. In fact, if we can, I hope we can finish this. And so let's get started. In the household of Yah, if we look at it as Vayivet Yahweh. And so what is that? That's in the household of Yah. And that's really interesting because this is one word. We have in the household of Yahweh. That's a whole bunch of words. But in the Hebrew, it's one word, because Yehovah or Yahweh is connected to the Bavet, or the house. Okay, so how is it spelled? Well, if you hear that, it has a bait in it, a double bait, and a yod and a tav. Well, we know that's going to mean something, because anytime you have something double, there's emphasis there. And so we're going to look at that here in a moment. So what is the bait? Of course, the bait in the vet is a house. Okay, the family, the dwelling place inside the bait. So bait, two of those right in a row. And then we have the yod, and we have learned through all of this that yod is that arm. It is the power and the strength. It is a symbolic of authority and work or action or deed. Okay. So bait, yod. And then what do we have to in this word? It's the tav. It's the covenant, the sign, that to seal, the covenant, to covenant. So we have all of this put together, and you have the house and the house, the work, and the sign of the covenant. And then you have Yod He Vav He, of course, and its work reveals, secure reveals. We're not really going to go into Yehovah or Yahweh right now, but we are going to look at this house and this house, and this Yod and this Tav. Okay, so I want us to understand that this thing is not just about the location. It's not. It's not just a dwelling place. It's the community that's within that dwelling place. It's the community. It's the house. Now, let's think about some of the doubles we've heard in the past. There's a lot in scripture, but we're just going to pick out a few of them. Isaiah 26:3 says, you will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed upon you because he trusts you. Now there we have a double. Perfect peace. It's really in Hebrew, shalom, shalom. and it's repeated 2 times. And we've got to understand that in Semitic languages, when you want to emphasize something, you can repeat it 2 times. That's part of the reason it happens. Thus, when your mind stays on Yah, you not only have peace, but you have really great peace. That emphasis on, oh, it's, I am at rest. Shalom, shalom. And there's more. It can be other aspects of the definition of shalom. What do you mean? Well, we know that in Hebrew, a word can have great meaning in the family. We look at the family really of words, and it can bring added meaning and depth. Even those words spelled with the same letters bring an aspect of depth to the meaning of the word. So when you say you have shalom, shalom, maybe it's calming peace. Maybe it's harmonious peace, or compensating peace, or prosperous peace, or healing peace, or all of the above, because it's so encompassing. Shalom, shalom, because all of those are adjectives for shalom. So translators aren't going to list everyone, but it's not really the job of the translators to figure it out. It's the glory of Yah to conceal a matter, and we're supposed to dig it out as kings and priests, right? So we dig this out so that we get the understanding of what he's trying to say. But that's not the only example we have. Remember in Genesis, we've studied it out, at least at Life of Worship, where Yah says, you shall eat. Well, what are you talking about? Genesis or 2:16 says, and Yehovah Elohim commanded the man, saying, of the tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat. Well, freely eat is man's translation. It's really eat. Okay. Or another example, if you eat of it, you shall surely die. It's really die. Yeah. There's an emphasis. There's other meaning. There's depth in that word when you put them together. But here we're talking about the house. So then it's more than just a house. It's not the building, really. What is it? What do we seek? What do we seek in worship? What do we seek? It's his presence. Don't you want to be in his presence? It's what we long for, to dwell in his presence. It's when we are inside the fence, separated inside the fence of his community, that we experience his mercy, that has said it's in the house, in the place of his presence. Remember, there's no punctuation in Hebrew. So if you want to get a point across, double that word. And that's not the only reason, but that does play a part of it. House. The covenant sign of work is, what is it? The passion that we have to do what God made me to do, to fulfill the purposes he intended for you and for me. That's where we find that shalom, or shalom, because we're doing what he's called us to do. Because he's created you and he's created me for a purpose. And it's not just to continue our lives as we see fit. It is to follow his will and say, Father, where do you want me? What do you want me to do? How do you want me to move? Where do you want me to turn left or right? When we're fulfilling his purposes, we find that shalom. When we're fulfilling his his purposes, we are going to dwell in his presence, in his house, in the house, because you were born to do something specific, maybe several things specifics, not just one. You always hear me pray, Father, let this person fulfill their purposes. Father, let me fulfill my purposes. You pray that over yourself, because that is where we're going to find rest, in his presence. That's what we long for, to be in his presence and do the things he's called us to do, fulfill every purpose for which he's called us. Yah's house is the place where we see his deeds revealed. We participate in them because he's invited us. He's invited us to be a part. Could he do everything himself? Absolutely. But he wants you to play a part in his house, in his community. He wants you to be a contributor, a partner with him in that house, in his house. We say yes. Will we carry the mantle? Will we partner with him? I put up a video on the Life of Worship YouTube page last week, and it was worth it all. It's one we did several years ago, and it is still so powerful. My granddaughter wanted to watch it several times over, and we did. And that's why I was like, I've got to get this back up on our channel. because every time I teared up, even watching it in a Robicider, every time I teared up, because you see the guy playing Yeshua, which actually is Jonathan. He holds out the mantle at the end and said, "Will you die for me? Will you do what I've called you to do? Will you be willing to carry the mantle, my mantle?" Wow, what a question. But in that, we can dwell in his presence when we're fulfilling and doing what he's called us to do, not what we want to do, or not what the world wants us to do, not what whomever says we should do. No, no, Yahweh's house is the place where his deeds are revealed. And it is where we find that shalom. It is where we find that rest. It's that place where we participate because he has invited us and because we are becoming who he's always intended us to be. I don't want to get to that day and say, you know, Sandy, you should have done this and this and this. You missed this one and this one and this one. Although there probably will be that. But I want him to say, well done, my good and faithful service. You fulfilled the purposes for which I called you. Those words are powerful because I dwelled in his presence. I long for his presence. And because of that, because I'm doing what he's called me to do, you become completely satisfied in that. Oh, to be satisfied with what you're doing, with where you are. You're satisfied with the love of being who he's called you to be, who he designed you to be, who he always intended you to be. See, when David wrote this, he was dwelling in the house of Yah. He might have been in a place that from the world's perspective looked far different than peace or rest, but he was dwelling in his presence. That word house, that bait, has a lot of meanings, as we've talked about. But one of the meanings we haven't said yet is it's the dwelling place of the bride in the groom's home. Because if you look at it from this direction, in this context, the groom's home is more than just the physical house. Oh, we're going back to his presence, aren't we? Well, yes, we are. It's more than his physical house in this world, because what is the bride supposed to do? The bride leaves her world. She separates herself. She's fenced in by that bridegroom, by that shepherd. She comes to his world. She leaves the world of her parents and her siblings. And guys, when I'm talking the bride, I'm talking male and female, okay? We leave the ways of old. Think about the matriarchs. They left their way of life. They left the rules and the lifestyle and their family, and they joined the life and the belief system and the ways of their husband, of their bridegroom. So should it be for us. See, in ancient times, people just didn't go out, hey, I'm going to go build my house. In the Middle East, no. What they did is the man went out and normally he built his house as an attachment to his father's house, to his father's dwelling place. So David is picturing himself as the bride, not just entering the home of his beloved, but entering the home of his beloved's father. And what happens there? There, the bride finds love and respect, that of her beloved, and she is made to feel at home, and she is taken care of. But the most important thing is that dwelling, the dwelling of her beloved, where she will dwell with him. Where? In harmony, in tov, in goodness, in mercy, chesed, through favor, and she'll do it forever. Isn't that what we want? She will follow her bridegroom no matter where he goes. She longs to be in his presence. I don't know about you, but when you were dating, if you were married, didn't you long to be in that soon to be spouse's presence? I remember I did. And it didn't happen very often because John was always on the road. We basically dated by phone. And when we'd go to church on the weekend when he'd come home, and then he'd fly back out. And so, but for those moments I got to be in his presence, I longed for those. And I know if you asked him, he'd probably say the same, hopefully, right? Okay. So that's a little bit of what we're looking at in the house, longing to be in his presence, that bride and that bridegroom, longing to fulfill the purposes that he's called us for, longing to do what he's called us to do, where we will be satisfied. But there's more, forever. Let's look at that word forever. we're not going to go into a lot of depth here. We are going to go into some depth, but I may take us to look at time and some things maybe in our next study. I might go there. But right now we're going to do a look at this basically. So in general, forever is usually a wreck, and that means long, and the word yom means day. Okay. So if we looked at a literal translation here, it would be, it is a sure thing that goodness and kindness will chase after me all the days of my life, and I will settle in the house of YHWH for a long number of days. Okay. If you look at an expanded translation, it would be, it's a sure thing that bountiful and beautiful things and kindness will chase after me all the days of my life, and I will remain and settle down in the palace of YHWH a very long number of days. Or the summary in verse 6, YHWH will not let his followers down as long as YHWH is our shepherd. He will always provide for them and take care of them, and he will provide shelter and a comfortable place to live forever and ever. Okay, la'arek, forever. Let's look at that, because we already know it's a great many number of days, and it's made even greater because it's forever and ever, right? But it is spelled with a lamed and olive oration, a cough. Okay, let's break that down a little bit and see if we can get some meaning there. Done it before, and we're doing it again right now. The lamed is the picture of that shepherd's staff, and it means to goad or to teach, but it also means to control or to have authority, or it's the voice of authority. The lamed, that voice of authority. And the olive is the strength and power, and it's a leader, it's a teacher. So right now we have the voice of the voice of authority, teaching, the voice of authority, teaching, strength and power of the leader, right? Okay, so let's go forward and see where we can end up here, okay? So cough, it is that palm of the hand or that open hand, but it also represents authority. It represents a possession and ownership, and it's closely associated with covenant. And the resh, of course, is the head, the beginning, that person, the highest, the top. So we're putting this together, and we have this voice of authority that teaches, and he is the strength, he is the leader, and he has an open hand with his authority as the head. Forever and ever, we rest in that. Wow, what a great place to be sure, a sure thing to be right there in his presence. So control, strength, person, or open hand and person. So forever, from God's perspective, is always experiencing his welcoming hand. So forever, from God's perspective, is always experiencing his open hand. Do you want to experience his open hand? What does it mean to dwell in the house forever? It means that we're always going to be in his presence, and he's going to have his hand open for us, taking care of us, giving us, because in covenant, everything that's his is ours and ours is his, right? Our enemies are his enemies are our enemies. It's covenant. It's about the bride and the bridegroom. It means the strength of what I'm going to find in his house comes out because he has this open hand. His hand isn't closed. He doesn't have a fist that's ready. No, his hand is open to us. And it's the strength of knowing that you belong and you're where you're supposed to be, fulfilling the purposes for which you've been called. That's amazing. It means to experience the welcoming hand of Yah for a very, very long time, all your days. To know what it means to be in his favor. To know, even if it's the very last day of your life and you waited that long, there's still that moment where you're his. But from David's perspective, when you're looking at David and the wonder of his life, it's that I've experienced Yah's favor for a very long time, and I'm fulfilled because of it. Forever, to forever live in his house, to forever be in his very presence, is experiencing his open hand. Someday, all the turmoil, all the battles, all the fighting, all the struggle is going to cease. And we're just going to rest in his love. That will be enough. We will quit fighting all this stuff that shouldn't even be stressing over, all the burdens that we carry. Quit trying to have our own way and do it what we think is best instead of what he thinks is best. And then we're going to experience and fulfill the purposes for which he's called. But we're so bent as people on doing what we think we should do, having our way, convincing ourselves that our way is God's way, and it's really not so. And doing it what the world says we should do, what's logical. And sometimes the very things we are to be doing to dwell in his presence are the most illogical things that we could even come across. They don't make sense. But remember, to be in his presence doesn't mean things are going to make sense. We trust in him, and his ways don't always make sense. Do you think it made sense to get rid of an army for Gideon? No. We look at that kind of thing throughout scripture. What Yah does doesn't always make sense to the world. And when we finally decide to do it his way instead of our way, we're going to find that rest. We're going to be on that pathway of righteousness. That chaos is going to be removed far from us because we're on his path. We're going to dwell in his presence, in his house, and goodness and mercy shall follow us. We've got to remember that. Now, the last word, ever, Yamim. That's a period of more days, right? The yod, the mem, the yod, the mem, the work, the waters of chaos, or the waters where something's birthed, and the waters of chaos. You've got that double, yod, mem, yod, mem. What do you do in the continuing process of forever? If it's forever and ever, you work to bring about order in the face of chaos. We work to expand his kingdom, our family. Remember what Mr. and Mrs. Adam have to do way back in Genesis? They are to take dominion. Well, so are you. So are we. When we remember who we are and whose we are, and that the enemy's already been defeated, we need to enforce the victory. And how do we do that? We do it by trusting in him, following his ways. He goes before and makes a way. So many things the word encourages on us to just trust him, and he's in that battle with us, and he's already got it. But we need to expand his kingdom. We don't need to shrink back. We need to be the lion that roars and goes and takes the land and does what we're supposed to do, because our task is involved in what Yah intended us to do, so that we can be an integral part of what he has in mind, so that we are fulfilled, so that we are satisfied with what we're doing, because it's what Yah's called us to do, so that we can bring about the restoration of his kingdom. When that happens, we're able to sit down at the end of the day and we're satisfied. Hey, Yah, I've done what you called me to do today, and it feels good. See, from David's perspective on sheep, it's not about the shepherd, it's about the sheep. Because remember, he was the shepherd. It was about fulfilling the needs of the sheep. Yah provides for his sheep. It's about the attitude of the sheep towards the shepherd. Do we fight him? Do we listen? Do we honor him? Do we realize that we're the bride and he is the bridegroom, and we should long to be in his presence, but he wants to be with his bride? Do we listen as sheep should listen to the voice of the shepherd? Do we know his voice? And that experience of being different from everything around us, because we have separated ourselves from the world, because we're not in this world, of this world. We've separated ourselves. We're in his kingdom, so that the enemies of themselves can't deny the presence of Yah's preparation, what he's done for his sheep, that he prepared a table in the presence of our enemies. Remember, we talked about that. We've talked about all of it. And every day, we get to be with him and experience what that's like. That continuing process of restoring order, that continuing process. So let's take a little more look at everything that we've just done, and maybe a little bit of review on it as well. Because one more time, he makes you lie down in green pastures. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow you all the days of your life, and you shall dwell in the house of Yah forever and ever. We automatically assume that Yah is talking about heaven here, or what the world's concept of heaven, what they think it might be. But we don't know the heart of David, because one more time, that la'arek, not alam, which is the normal word for forever, it means this length, and the yamim, which is the length of days. The length of days. David seems to be talking about the remaining days of his life right here on this earth, not in heaven. We assume that the house of Yah means heaven, and therefore we're thinking it's the afterlife. No, because Yah wants us to also understand that He's got us right here. The length of our days here. Would that be encouraging to know that He's got us right here, right now? We don't have to wait till tomorrow or the tomorrow or the tomorrow. He's got us right now. David is talking about the here and now. He's taking care of us. He's dwelling in His presence. Before this, David says goodness and mercy, which is tov, in harmony with Yah, and mercy that follow him all the days of his life, that hasad. See, Jewish literature teaches us that a spiritual context of this word pictures one being sheltered in the heart of Yah. Remember, I've been talking about His presence. To be sheltered in His heart, how beautiful is that? So the word follow, radapa, which is used in the PL form, and it means to be pursued or to be chased after, to be sought after. In other words, Yahweh is chasing after us to be in harmony with Him so that He can shelter us where? In His heart, in His presence. He's longing to share His heart with His bride. And we should long to share our hearts with Him and to see His heart and to hear His heart, because we long to be with our husband and our husband longs to be with us. We don't have to beg and plead to be sheltered in His heart. No, but we do have to stop running things in our own lives and running away from Him so that we can pursue our own path, so that we can pursue what we think is good. No, that goes back to what I've already said. We've got to trust Him enough so that we share our hearts with Him so that He can share our hearts with us. When we look deeper into this word, radava, follow, we find that it has this numerical value of 284. What else has that value? For His mercies endure forever. Radapa. His mercies endure forever. So that means that this statement is going to have play on follow. His mercies endure forever. See, the rabbis believed the words were literally this open portal, this open place, as it did for Jehoshaphat when he went to war against the three kings. In other words, Yahweh is pursuing us with His open heart, His open hand, this place where we can gather into His presence like this portal. Oh, I'm right here with you, Yah. And that's where we enter His heart and His rest. So maybe this is the key to opening Yah's heart of rest. He makes us lie down in green pastures. The green pastures, as we've studied already, are that dashah. And in the spelling of this word, it has this built-in idea that it's this portal to the sheen, to the resting place in the olive, in God's heart. Wow. To dwell with you, Yah. David says that Yah makes or causes him to find a resting place in Yah's heart, in His presence. He's made a way so that we can connect like the DNA and the ladder that we've talked about in the previous tour portions, these recent ones. When David says, surely goodness and mercy will chase after me all my days, he's admitting that maybe he was running away from God, but what happens when the loving kindness of Yah catches up? He's going to lead you to green pastures and this place where His presence is, this open portal where we can rest in His heart, where we will experience His open hand. You can't assume that David referenced the house of Yahweh, that he means heaven, because we're living in the here and the now and we need Him. We need Him desperately. But this word house, bait, in which has this so many different meanings, also means the heart in the dwelling place. And we cannot forget that. I will dwell in the heart of Yah for all my days. To David, it wasn't enough to dwell in the presence of Yah. No, not only do I want to be in your presence, I want to be in your heart. That's where I want to dwell. Is that where you want to dwell? I long for His presence, but to be so close that you're in His heart. I will dwell in the heart of Yah for all my days. Wow. People fall in love. They share their hearts with each other. They open themselves. They reveal their longings. They reveal their dreams. They even reveal their disappointments. But when you share, it's risky. You're taking a chance. because all those things that you've experienced make you the person you are today. But when you share, it makes you vulnerable. It gives the person you're sharing with the power to hurt you. It does, to wound you. Thus, we open our hearts only to those that we trust. Can you trust Yah? Absolutely. We are designed to share our hearts with someone. And that may be someone here on earth, but Yah wants us to share our hearts with him. We are the bride. He is the bridegroom. People actually pay to share their heart, to psychiatrists, to counselors, but we have the great counselor, Yeshua HaMashiach. Yes, we don't need the therapist. We have the therapist, right? And the greatest fulfillment is love. Of love is when we can trust someone and we can trust him. He's not going to reveal our secrets, the secrets of our heart. We know we can share our hearts with Yah because he's not a threat. He's not going to go around and tell everything to everybody. No, he's not going to do that. He wants us to share because he loves us, and we are to love him in return. Yes, that makes us vulnerable. That's exactly the place we're supposed to be, because it creates this deep bond between the bride and the bridegroom. We've made ourselves vulnerable to each other. He wants to share with us. And it's this vulnerability that creates this bond, and it causes us to rest in shalom because we're with that person, that we get to share our hearts, that we get to dwell not only in his presence, but in his heart. Can we trust him? Yes, we can. Do we seek his presence? I sure hope so. Do we stay on the path because our goal is rest? Our goal is his presence. Our goal is him. Do we take dominion to remove the chaos? Do we remain separated from the world so that we are unto him, so we can dwell? I hope so. Well, that is the study of Psalm 23. I hope that you have learned. I hope you've enjoyed it. You can go back and listen on the Life of Worship YouTube channel, Life of Worship Ministries on YouTube. And it's there, at least for a time. And we're going to have it available probably on a drive or something so that you could have the whole thing for yourself. But to be in his presence, Psalm 23. What a powerful thing to pray. What a powerful thing to understand. So we are glad that you've joined us today. I've enjoyed this journey on this study, and we're going to start something new next with you. So until next time, I want you guys to just enjoy this time, seek his presence, long to be in his heart, and trust him. So, shalom.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.